Welcome everyone to the channel today. Today we're going to be reviewing the Assassin's Creed Brotherhood of Venice board game. After completely finishing the entire campaign, it was 24 scenarios out of 26 possible scenarios, or memories they're called in this game. And it took probably, I want to say, between 30 and 40 hours to completely finish the game with all the setup and everything. And I really had no interest in purchasing this game at all. The only reason why I bought it was because I saw it on Amazon up here in Canada for 44 bucks. And I was like, well, for 44 bucks, it can't be that bad. It's worth a shot, right? I mean, I should be able to resell the game for that much or more. I was seeing this game, the retail version, for around 120 bucks, 150 bucks sometimes. And the deluxe Kickstarter was probably quite a bit more. This is just the retail edition that I have. It only comes with about 5 miniatures of the assassins themselves. And then all the enemies are standees. But the Kickstarter Deluxe Edition came with miniatures for all the enemies that you fight as well. So there's just some of the minis. So I painted these up because there's only 5 of them, and I was like, hey, that shouldn't be too hard to paint up. And I liked that. And I really had, not too much exposure to this IP. I played, I think, the very first video game that came out on like the original Xbox or whatever it was, like 15 years ago. So, I knew the IP, I knew the basis of the game, that your assassins getting kind of sent back into other people's memories and, trying to alter history and stuff like that. But other than that, I wasn't that into this game or this theme. But this game, it did surprise me quite a bit. So continue on with, watching this review and find out exactly what I think about it. How I do reviews is I like to break down each section of a game and rate each section on what I felt, how well it did in that particular area. And then at the very end, I will take the average of all of those and give you my final rating for the game. So that is kind of the format I like to use. And with that, let's get on with the review. And I will very quickly just kind of do a run through of how the game kind of plays. Definitely not going to be giving a full rules overview or anything like that. I do have a playthrough of this game on my channel, so if you want to learn more kind of how it plays, you can watch that. But you'll be given one of these cards at the beginning of your memory or scenario, and you're going to follow these steps. And then these are going to be all the different actions you can take. So it starts with an event phase, and there's this deck of event cards, and the story kind of progresses. It adds more event cards as the game goes on, and more equipment cards, and more treasure chests that you can find, and stuff like that. So this is what an event card looks like. This is the direction the enemies will move at the end of the round. But yeah, you're going to have your event phase, an event will happen, and then the assassins are going to take their turns, and then it'll be the enemy phase. So you're going to have a reinforcement phase, and you're going to draw one of these cards, and based on whether you've been revealed or not. So if you're in this green status or the red status, will determine how many enemies come out on the board. And in the different locations, there'll be 4 different locations. So obviously when you're in the red status, a lot more enemies come out and it gets a lot harder. And there are ways to turn the status back into the green again through different card effects and stuff like that. And basically these are all the different actions you can do. So there's quite a few things you can do. You can move. Everything kind of costs 1 to 3 cubes. There's objectives you can complete on the map, and they're going to look like this. And then they're going to have some kind of a objective like that on there. And then they're going to give you so many experience points. And then when you complete the objective, you get the experience. And a lot of things will give you experience, and then you'll be able to upgrade your character, kind of like we see here. So you're going to get more skills. You start the game with none of these, and you're going to be able to get those, and then your ability. is going to be getting better. So I just finished the campaign a few days ago, so this is still left out from that, but I ended on level 4, which is the highest level. And you have so many action cubes. So you start with 3 every round, with the possibility to get a 4th one. You have your health, like a typical kind of dungeon crawler game. And that's basically what this is it's kind of a dungeon crawler with a cool stealth mechanic. So as you're moving your character around, say there was some enemies here, and say I moved onto that space, I would have to roll 1 of these red dice, detection dice, for every enemy that was in that space. So if this symbol gets rolled, you get detected, and then you have to put this red ring under your character's base, which signifies that you have been detected. If you roll this one, then that means you only get detected if you are in the red alert status. And there's this little token to represent that. And then if you roll a blank, obviously nothing happens. And you will have ways, even if you do get detected, as you progress through the game, you're going to get more abilities that are going to let you bypass that or not get exposed under certain conditions. And when you, after you kill those enemies, say you knock them down, and then you were to leave a space, your little red ring stays in that space, and then you become incognito again. But that doesn't change the alert status. That still remains red until you play a card. There is a card called a town crier. There it is right there. And you can spend an action there, and you can turn the status token back to green again. And that, costs an action. And this is your equipment deck. So these are all the different things you can find. And more will get added as you play the game. You can even hire mercenaries to join you for a turn. And that is basically the game in a nutshell. And you're trying to complete all the objectives that will be on the map that the scenario has set out for you. And each memory will be slightly different. I mean, they're very similar. You're doing similar things, but how you do them and what you'll be doing will be different as you progress through the campaign. So first of all, let's talk about the components for this game. So as you can see, there are a lot of components. There's a lot going on in this game. And overall, though, the components are all really nice. These dice are super cool, custom dice. They're really fun to roll. The cards are all really nice. They're a little thin, but they're almost like a plasticky kind of feel. And they're really nice to hold in your hand and stuff like that. I like that these little plastic rings that go under the bases of your minis, they're like a silicone. So they go on and off really nice. They don't damage the mini at all when you're trying to put them on. I wish all games had silicone rings like this. It makes it really easy to play with. The art on these boards, on the map tiles, on the game in general, are all really nice and help bring you into the theme of the game. The player boards are really nice. They've got these slotted holes to hold your health cubes and your action cubes. The only annoying thing is, some of your equipment cards kind of fling all over the place, but there is like little slotted spots for you to put all your skills that you have. They give you tokens to track which ones you've used every scenario and stuff, and spots for your armor down here. And they are really nice. My only complaints about the components are some of these bigger cardboard pieces. Like here's a big one. They are just starting to warp, just a tiniest little bit. Not a huge deal at all, but they are starting to do that. Any cardboard piece that's this big is gonna start to warp a little bit. Simon had that problem with a lot of their games as well. And then some of these plastic bases don't hold as tight as I would have liked. This one actually does, but some of them are almost to the point where they're falling out a little bit. And I mean, you don't want them holding them too tight, but you want them tight enough that they hold. And most of them are pretty good. There's just the odd one that was a little loose and felt like the standee was gonna fall right out of the base. But other than that, components are really nice on this game. Maybe not the best I've ever seen, but they are on the higher tier of components for sure. And I would rate the components an 8 out of 10 overall. Next, we'll talk about the setup and the storage. So the initial setup, when you first open the game box, there's just a big stack of cards. You had all these event cards in a giant stack, and then all the equipment, all the skills for the characters, all the scenario cards are all just kind of in like 2 or 3 giant stacks of cards with all the dividers. So the game came with all these different dividers for all the different memories and stuff like that. But it was all in one big giant pile, and you had to figure out which cards went where. And I don't really remember the rulebook mentioning that like at all. So it was a bit confusing at first. You had to kind of figure out what they were trying to do here. And then, it made sense. It starts with 0.0 or 0.1, 0.2, and then, 1.3, and then it went to the 2 point whatevers, and then the 3s and the 4s. And there's spots for your HQ. So this is all actually really nice and organized. But the initial setup of it all took a little while, and it was a bit confusing. But once it's set up, like, this is actually really nice. It's super handy and makes it quicker to set up your scenario initially. The insert is pretty good. It stores everything with enough space to spare. You're not like cramming everything in. The only thing I would have liked to have seen is space to hold all the minis, all the standees for the enemies with the bases on, because it's really annoying having to take the plastic bases off every time you put this game away, because they won't fit in the box like that. So that was a little bit annoying, but that's the only major complaint. There is enough room in there to store everything, so that's good. I like that. Games should be that way. The game is a bit long to set up if you're setting it up from scratch every time, because not only do you have, your headquarters and everything to set up, you got all your player boards, you got tokens, you got to put your enemies and all the standees, and then you got to set up your board, read in the scenario book how your scenario is going to get set up. And it does a good job, though, of telling you what to do. But it's not without its time commitment for sure. I would say in about 20 to 25 minutes, you can have this set up. And if you were leaving it out from play session to play session, it may only take you about 10 minutes to set up. So most of the time I was able to leave this set up on my table, and I could just swap out the map tiles and put all the different tokens on. Like I showed you in the overview, there's some objective tokens sometimes. There's these fast travel stations. There's just a million tokens you can put on. Little treasure chests and stuff like that. So if you're just leaving this set up, it's a lot easier to get going again. But that is the setup and storage, and I rate that a 7 out of 10 overall. And next we're going to talk about the rulebook. And I thought this rulebook was amazing. This rulebook was super well done. Every section has a number. Instead of having page numbers, every section has a number. And so whenever the game was teaching you a new rule, it would just say, refer to this section and read that section. So the game really taught you how to play super quick, super easy. And I think all games should be like this. Like, this was a really slick system, I thought. Maybe sometimes it can be a little hard finding which section it was that you had to read again, but there's an index at the back that if you're needing to look up something, you can find it pretty quickly here, and it gives you the section number, not the page number, but the section number, and then you just go to that section and find it, and really nice. I really enjoyed this rulebook a lot. I had not too many issues at all. The only thing was there was still a few rules that weren't 100% clear sometimes, or weren't mentioned, especially in some of the memories and scenarios and stuff. There was still a few rules that I was kind of scratching my head over, or had to look up on Board Game Geek or something like that. So it gets a few points knocked against it for that, but overall, I'm rating this rulebook a 9 out of 10. It's really high quality material too, and between it and the campaign book, everything was pretty clear and laid out, and easy to get going. So I rate that a 9 out of 10 overall. And next we're going to talk about the story and the narrative. And some choices will come back to help you or haunt you in the future, both in the memories and in the headquarters over here, mainly through these contracts you complete in the headquarters. And not all the choices you make, but some of the choices you make will kind of affect you, not in huge ways, but in, smaller-ish ways. And the story to the game, the written story, was nothing amazing at all. It's basically there to give you some kind of a flavor, to give you some kind of context to what you're doing, but that's the story up there. Like, so this mission is like 2 sentences, so like not enough to really like make you feel like or pull you into what you're doing. It's kind of just like, some flavor text, and it wasn't great. It wasn't captivating. Now, having said that, this game isn't trying to be like this crazy in-depth amazing story. Like, I had just finished playing Tainted Grail, Kings of Ruin before this, so maybe my expectations were a little too high there. But this game gives you, it's more what happens in the game that tells the story than the actual story itself. Kind of like what Nemesis does. Like Nemesis, the story of what happens in the game as the queen comes out of the nest and kills you on your first turn, like stuff like that. Crazy cinematic things. But Nemesis does it way better than this game. This game, it does an okay job. But overall, I'm rating the story and narrative a 5 out of 10 because it was there, but it wasn't really great. And it seems like it was just kind of slapped on a little bit. But it did have some kind of story, but I am coming at it with a 5 out of 10. So nextly, we are going to talk about ease of play and the mechanics of the game. So this is a fairly standard dungeon crawl type board game, and it's fairly streamlined, and it was pretty easy to figure out and get to the table. Playing from one play session to another, there was a few rules to review again because it does have more going on than like a Zombicide. There's, took a little bit of extra time to just relearn a few things, how the enemies reacted and stuff like that. But I do like how they give you every single memory or scenario that you play has a card like this, tells you the initial kind of things you got to do, and then you flip this over and it's a player aid. And it breaks down what happens in a game turn, all the different actions you can do, and the things, how to resolve your headquarters step at the end of the whole memory. And I like that a lot. It's fairly streamlined in that way. Reminds me of Zombicide in the way that, you have a bunch of actions you can do, and hordes of enemies will come on, and you'll have a bunch of, oh crap moments. But that's kind of where the comparison to Zombicide ends. This is quite a bit more involved than Zombicide, I would say. It's got more going on for sure. And this is a much more in-depth game. But you are still rolling dice for a lot of things. So, I mean, if dice bugs you a lot, then that might be an issue for you. The most annoying thing were these red detection dice, because it seemed like you always got detected. There was some times though when you didn't get detected, and holy man, was that amazing. That was a good feeling. And this symbol here you'd only get detected if you were in the red status. So that kind of saved you sometimes if you were still in the green. And in the beginning of the game, it seemed like you would get detected quite a bit more, like almost all the time, because for every enemy on the board. So if I moved into this space here, I would have to roll 4 dice, one for every one of those. So like the odds of all 4 rolling blanks, or that symbol, if you were still in the green status, was pretty low. But as the game progressed and you got more powerful, you found more ways to mitigate that. And so that was really cool. You felt like you were getting stealthier as the game progressed. But overall, I rate the ease of play and mechanics an 8 out of 10. It was fairly easy to learn if you had played any of these types of games before. And next I want to talk about the fun factor and desire to play this game. And this game has surprised me for sure. It's been a lot more fun than I expected it to be, I guess. I think my desire to play this was a bit lower just because of the theme. I'm not quite as into this theme as some of the other campaign games I've played that are more fantasy or space themed, and I like those themes a lot more, but this did pull me into the theme pretty good and made you feel like you were this incognito assassin taking out bad guys. I think if you love this video game, I think your desire to play this game would probably be way higher. And I just don't have as much experience with this universe, or not as drawn into it as some people would. But yeah, if you love this, love this video game, you would totally love this game. So that is a caveat for me. If you love this more than me, you will like this more than me. But I did really like that sneaking around theme, as there aren't many games that do this. I do have a game called Spectre Ops, which is a little bit older game, like 2015, I want to say. And you're doing the same kind of thing, but that wasn't the campaign game. Even though that game worked really well as like a single shot game that didn't take too long. But I do like this better than Spectre Ops, as the map and the objectives change every time you play. And my desire to play this was usually so-so, not the highest, but not the lowest. But once I got playing, I was having a really fun time and enjoying what the game was giving me. So overall, I rate the fun factor and my desire to play a 7 out of 10. And next we are going to go over the campaign length and length of play. So overall, there was about 26 total scenarios, I believe. And you don't necessarily play them all. I played 24 out of the 26. And they were all around, well, the first few, there's about 4 scenarios that are really quick, and they're just kind of there to teach you the game. And I really like that. I like when games kind of use gameplay to teach you the game. And each scenario, with setup and teardown and playing, each scenario would probably take you around 2 hours. Some of the later ones take maybe a little longer, so you might have a total of like 2.5 to 3 hours at most. But most of the time you're around 2 hours with setup and teardown, which is pretty good. If you had this set up already and you played scenario to scenario, you could play 2 games in 2 hours pretty easily. So the play sessions were fairly quick, I thought, and you could get through this campaign quicker than other games. Not the quickest, like Sleeping Gods, especially the first one, you can get through in probably like 12 to 15 hours, maybe 20 hours at the most. And Distant Skies was very similar to that, maybe a little longer, probably 20 to 30 hours. And this was probably about 40 hours overall, but still shorter than Tainted Grail Kings of Ruin, which for me was between 65 and 70 hours. So it depends how long you like your campaigns. If you like a shorter campaign, this one is probably, it might be a better fit for you because it's a little easier to get through, I found at least anyway. And I'm rating the campaign length and length of play a 9 out of 10 for those reasons. And next we are going to talk about the minis. So there is only 5 minis in the retail version of the game. And I will show them all to you here. There's Ezio. And I am rating the minis for this game an 8 out of 10. They're all pretty good. Not like the most amazing I've ever seen, but these are pretty good, for especially for the price I paid. And they look really good, painted up as usual, like all minis, because color is better than gray. And I don't know, just having colored minis just pulls me into the theme and into what I'm doing quite a bit more. So minis, 8 out of 10 overall. I want to talk about the immersiveness of the game and how it brings you into the theme of the game. The stealth mechanic is really thematic, really brings the theme of the game alive. That being said, you generally don't stay hidden for too long, but I think that maybe helps balance the game a bit. And there are ways to mitigate it, like I talked about. And it feels so good when you roll that detection die and you don't get discovered. I always cheered a bit when that happened. And as the game progresses, like I talked about, you find ways to mitigate that luck a bit, make yourself get hidden easier again. The whole headquarters thing is pretty cool. It adds a bit more depth to the game as well. Although I didn't find myself using all the areas in the headquarters equally. I used the hospital and the command room the most, so I could heal my assassins after each memory and upgrade the HQ as quickly as possible because it benefited you if you did. It is neat as it evolves and grows, and as the scenarios go on, though, your headquarters does get a little beefier and more powered up as well. But I also think the game probably would have been fine without it too. It's kind of a town phase between scenarios that isn't too complex or fiddly, so I like that. But it does add another thing that you have to do. I also like that you have to choose which headquarters characters you want to have stay in the headquarters to help you there, or come with you to potentially help you throughout the memory or the scenario. So there was some nice decision making there. You couldn't do it all, so you had to figure out what you were going to do, who you're going to bring with you, and who you're going to leave in the headquarters, which was nice. And this isn't really a con, my next point here. Just kind of a thematic disconnect, I guess, which is just a little humorous. When you search and loot the dead bodies that you've assassinated, you can find a lot of weird items in those bodies, you know? Like a mercenary. Like, what's this guy hiding in his pockets? Oh, mercenary. Excellent. That's exactly what I needed, you know? And look, this one has a thief in his pocket. What exceptional timing. We needed someone to go loot bodies for us, so we don't have to. So that part is just a little weird and funny. Makes me chuckle when it take time to think about the situation in real life, but it's just a board game thing, right? They have to do it somehow. Pretty hard to get around that. And I liked how there was ways to turn your detection status from red back to green again, and deciding when to do that was a big deal as more enemies come out in the red status, right? And if you ever ran out of standees of either one of the bad guys in the scenario, then you lost that scenario. So it created a really nice tension of, you couldn't just ignore the enemies. You had to defeat them and search them, because the only way to remove them once you killed them is to search them, because you would lose the game if you didn't do that. So that added a nice element that created a lot of tension in the game. And I really liked how you could glide from one rooftop to another, or from the tower to the other. Every scenario has a tower in it, like this. And so you could always sync on top of the tower, and then it would reveal more things. That was also really cool, just like in the video games. And for those reasons, I rate the immersiveness of this game a 9 out of 10. It did a really good job of making you feel like assassins and like you were doing the things an assassin could do, and made you feel like you were playing the video game, but in board game form. And that's what it should have been doing, and that is what it does. So that is what I rate the immersiveness, 9 out of 10. And next we're going to talk about the difficulty of the game. So some scenarios are definitely harder than others, and I definitely had to do some of them multiple times over to get through them. But overall, I felt the game was a little bit more on the easier to medium easy side than the super hard impossible side. But some missions I did just barely make it, and some I did have to go over again because I failed them. It does suffer a bit from that overpowered hero syndrome. As you level up, it can become easier and easier as the campaign goes on. Similar to like Tainted Grail, Sleeping Gods, some of these other games. But the elite guards and the bosses do get harder as the game goes on to give you more and more of a challenge. And I mean, I want to be challenged, but I don't mind if it's a little bit on the easier side, as I don't always love being beat on constantly by the game, and I do want to get through the game. I don't necessarily want to keep playing the same scenario over and over and over just to get through it, because I have other campaign games I want to play too. So I do want to experience them, but I don't want to, have them linger on forever either. But some people love being destroyed constantly, but that's just not me. But yeah, it's hard enough that you are challenged, but it's not so impossible that you can't get through the campaign. So overall, I rate the difficulty a 7 out of 10. And lastly, I wanted to talk about the replayability of the game. So once you play through all the memories once, they're not going to be that much different the next time around, other than playing with different characters maybe, which will have different skills and abilities that you're going to gain as the game goes on. So the replayability and desire to play this again is lower because of that, but you definitely could play through it again. I'm just not sure if I necessarily really want to or not, at least not for a while, because things aren't going to change a ton other than just the luck of which bad guys come out when, and if you're getting detected. You could play each scenario differently, I guess, but I didn't find that the replayability was going to be as high for this game, so I'm coming at it with a 6 out of 10. But again, not to say you can't play this again. You totally could with the different characters. Just my desire to do it again isn't quite as high, so I'm rating that a 6 out of 10. And when you add all those ratings up and come out with the average, my overall rating for this game is a 7.5 out of 10, which is a pretty good score. So there you have it. That is my review for Assassin's Creed Brotherhood of Venice. If any of that sounded interesting to you, go check this game out. Either buy it new or find it used for cheaper, and use this to determine whether or not this is the right game for you. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe as usual, and have a great day, everyone.